The sound hit first. A single sharp thud, the unmistakable collision of a boot and bone. Not loud enough to echo, but deep enough to silence an entire room. Every recruit froze. Every conversation, every breath, suspended in midair, as if the walls themselves refused to carry sound. The fluorescent lights hummed above the training hall, flickering faintly over the blue mats stained by sweat, dust, and now, disbelief. Lieutenant Commander Elise Hart didn't fall. Her head jerked slightly to the side from the impact, but her balance never shifted. Her boots stayed rooted, perfectly aligned, spine straight, posture intact. The man who struck her, Captain Ward, lowered his leg with a grin. A grin that had too much history behind it, the kind of expression you'd seen from men who mistake humiliation for leadership. His breath came hard, not from exhaustion, but from anger looking for an excuse. The recruits around the mat looked everywhere except directly at her. No one dared move. Elise turned her head back slowly. The motion had precision, military, mechanical, but there was nothing robotic about the calm in her eyes. There was life in them, sharp and calculating, the kind of life that could slice through arrogance like a scalpel through silk. "Resume the drill," she said quietly. Her tone wasn't defiance. It wasn't submission either. It was simply order, stripped clean of ego. Captain Ward blinked, thrown off by her composure. He had expected an outburst, a protest, something that would justify his dominance in front of the recruits. Instead, she gave him nothing. And that nothing, that silence, began to suffocate him. That night, the barracks smelled of disinfectant, metal, and silence. Elise sat in front of the mirror, her reflection framed by the dim yellow light of a flickering bulb. A faint bruise had begun to bloom near her temple. Not purple yet, just a shade of gray beneath the skin. She reached for a strip of gauze, tore it with surgical precision, and began to wrap it around her head. Each movement was slow, deliberate, ritualistic. She'd done this before, not in a mirror, but in the desert, under the static buzz of a broken radio. Helmand Province. The explosion hadn't felt like sound back then. It had felt like gravity collapsing. The world had gone sideways, dust swallowing everything but the hum in her earpiece, the calm voice of her commander cutting through chaos. Pain is noise. Command is signal. She'd never forgotten those words. They weren't motivation. They were mechanics, how to think when the world collapses. Now she whispered them again. Pain is noise. Command is signal. She tightened the gauze. Her breathing slowed. And the silence returned. Not emptiness, but ownership. The base operated on noise. Boots on concrete, barked orders, radios crackling, the metallic rhythm of discipline. But Elise moved differently. She didn't fill space. She defined it. When she entered the mess hall the next morning, conversation dipped by instinct. Her tray was balanced, her steps measured. She said nothing. But Ward saw her from across the room. Saw the bruise, the gauze, the calm posture that refused to give him what he wanted. His pride twisted into something uglier. "You see that?" he muttered to a junior officer beside him. "She's the type who mistakes silence for strength." The officer didn't respond. Ward smirked, mistaking the quiet for agreement. He was wrong again. 3 days later, Elise's report landed on his desk. Night simulation drill, reflex coordination, no live fire. Ward didn't read it. He just scrawled his signature across the bottom, half bored, half dismissive. Another exercise, another night. He never noticed the details. No observers, no camera authorization, limited personnel. All approved under his own authority. He didn't see the setup because arrogance rarely reads the fine print of its own downfall. The desert at night carries a silence that doesn't belong to nature. It's the silence of distance, miles of emptiness between sound and echo. The base's training field sat just beyond the perimeter, a patch of flat gravel surrounded by red beacon lights that pulsed like veins. Elise stood at the edge, suited up, helmet clipped, movements as efficient as clockwork. She checked the perimeter lights, then the timer on her wrist. 2000 hours. Captain Ward arrived with 2 NCOS. He was laughing, always laughing. "Commander," he said, tone dripping with mock formality. "Ready for your little exercise?" Yes, sir. Her voice was steady. She didn't look at him. Ward raised an eyebrow. You don't seem nervous. I don't waste nerves, sir. He snorted, waving to his men. Let's make it quick. I've got reports due by midnight. Elise pressed her comms button. All units, initiate blackout sequence. The floodlights cut. Darkness swallowed the range. Only the red perimeter lights remained, pulsing faintly through the dust. Maintain formation, she said over the comms. Her voice calm, composed, the kind of calm that irritates insecure men. Ward chuckled into his mic. Careful, Commander. Head injuries, slow reflexes. Static. Then her voice again, quiet, precise. Let's test that theory. The first sound was gravel shifting under a misplaced boot. Then, nothing. The NCO on Ward's right turned his head, eyes scanning the dark. Movement, 3 o'clock. Ward pivoted, flashlight beam cutting across empty air. The light caught dust, and something moved through it like water. A blur, a soundless impact. A body hit the ground, silent except for the soft exhale of breath leaving lungs. The NCO never even saw her coming. One neutralized, Elise's voice said. Ward's grip on his rifle tightened. Stay sharp, he barked. But his voice cracked slightly, and the sound betrayed him. The second NCO was already trembling. He turned too fast. His light jittered across the rocks. A figure appeared behind him, low, precise, a ghost in human form. She moved in 3 motions. Redirect, disarm, drop. The man hit the dirt softly, more like being laid down than thrown. Ward spun. You think this proves something? He shouted into the dark. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It proves control is faster than anger. He lunged, impulsive, sloppy. She moved like physics incarnate. A pivot, a shift of weight, and his body betrayed him, momentum becoming his enemy. He hit the ground face first, dust puffing up around his uniform. Before he could push himself up, she knelt beside him, knee on his shoulder, one hand steady at the base of his neck. This was never a fight, Captain, she whispered. It was a correction. She stood, leaving him in the dirt. The red lights pulsed against his face, humiliation illuminated in crimson flashes. He lay there long after she was gone, long after the silence settled again. The next morning, the entire base buzzed with the story. Nobody said her name aloud, but everyone knew. The version changed with each retelling. 3 NCOs, 5, 10. But the moral stayed the same. Someone had tried to break the quiet one. The quiet one had taught him why that was impossible. Captain Ward demanded an inquiry. He stormed into the debriefing room like a man trying to outrun shame. She set me up. She turned a drill into an ambush. Colonel Vance sat behind the desk, unimpressed. His face carved from stone, his tone slower than gravity. Commander Hart, he said. Your statement? Elise stood beside him, posture immaculate. No, sir. Routine simulation. 3 participants. No injuries sustained. Except yours, Vance said, nodding to her bruise. She didn't blink. Training consequence, sir. Ward slammed his hand on the table. She's lying! Captain. Vance's tone froze him mid-word. Across the room, Specialist Mendez stepped forward with a recorder in hand. Sir, he said, voice careful, there's something you need to hear. He pressed play. Ward's voice filled the room. Careful, Commander. Head injuries, slow reflexes. Then a pause, followed by another clip from the previous day. She needed to learn respect. That kick probably helped. The silence that followed could have stopped a clock. Vance leaned back, eyes like winter. That'll be enough. He turned to Elise. Commander Hart, you're dismissed. She nodded once. Yes, sir. As she left the room, Ward spoke. Low, venomous. You think this makes you untouchable? She stopped at the door, her profile calm in the dim light. No, Captain, she said softly. It just makes you visible. Then she was gone. The mess hall that evening was quieter than a chapel. Every sound seemed muted, trays clattering softer, conversations halting mid-word when she walked in. Elise didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and simply didn't care. She carried her tray to a table near the window and sat alone, eating in silence. As she stood to leave, she passed Ward's old table, now empty. She placed a folded note on the steel surface. 4 words, written in block letters. Pain fades, conduct stays. Then she walked out. Weeks later, Captain Ward was gone, reassigned for administrative review. His office stripped bare. His name erased from the rotation board. But something else remained. On the training field, the gravel where he'd fallen had hardened into darker soil, marked by tire treads and time. Someone, nobody knew who, had placed a single metal tag there. Engraved on it were 3 words. Control is command. Elise Hart's transfer orders came quietly. Reassignment, location classified. Her locker was empty by morning, her nameplate gone by noon. But her echo stayed. The recruits still whispered her mantra during drills. Pain is noise. Command is signal. The phrase became unofficial doctrine, printed on wristbands, scribbled in notebooks, muttered before deployment. A year later, a new unit joined the base. Fresh faces, fresh arrogance. Their instructor pointed to the training mats. "You see that mark there?" he said, tapping the dark patch in the gravel. "That's where a captain learned that silence outranks shouting." Someone laughed nervously. The instructor didn't. "Remember this," he said quietly. Noise wins attention. Control wins wars. Would you have stayed silent after being hit? Or do you believe anger proves more than mastery ever could? Because sometimes the loudest power in the world is the one that doesn't need to raise its voice.